So I like to you can say Sanath here. He's co-founder Agile Consultancy, knowledge management expert from Knoco, Malaysia. He's going to talk about, it's a very going to be a very insightful session, I'm sure, driving a rapid impact with lean knowledge management. You'll discover how rapid impact by implementing lean knowledge management practices that streamlines that process, enhances efficiency, accelerate the growth. You know, so I'd let Sanath take it forward from here. Sanath,
Thank you. Thank you so much. Am I clear?
loud and clear.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me today. As introduced, I'm Sanath from Knoco, Malaysia, and also the co-founder of Agile Consultancy. Now, just before I start on this topic of driving rapid impact with Lean KM, I just want to exhibit the background that I'm coming from. Pretty much on the agility side of things and looking at how we can leverage agility in harnessing impact on KM. Now, let's start with what we already know, right? Given the very fact that we evolved from the agriculture revolution, crops, herds of animals, moving on to the industrial revolution, where humanity began to move into development of machines and factories, known as the industrial revolution. And people moved from cities and where they were from, heading on to factories. And then we have the information revolution, where manufacturing is no longer the focus and people are now free to live where they want to be in the domain of information and collaboration. Now, herein comes predominantly aspect of value and the ability to use knowledge to build goods and services. And today, here and now, we are in the AI and information revolution. More than ever before, knowledge has profound implications, transforming how organizations capture, share, and apply knowledge. So when we talk about this whole ambit of knowledge workers, more than ever before in this revolution, we're looking at researchers, practitioners, educators, legal specialists, and all coming together to harness knowledge in this era. Now, why I'm talking to you about this, given the fact that we do know that KM now, more than ever before, is compounded with a series of challenges. And that comes from strategy. Our previous speaker, Rajesh, has spoken about the need for strategy, the alignment that we need to have, the whole resistance that's coming on board from employees, the adoption, and so on. And we have technology issues inundating how we exemplify KM. We also have culture, once again spoken about by the previous speaker, the aspect of trust and collaboration. We also have resource constraints coming in, whether it's financial, technological, human resource, and so on. And not forgetting, we have issues with data and quality of information, dealing with inaccuracies, outdated stuff, eroding trust, poor decision making, and stuff like that. And obviously, we also have issues with the leadership. The absence of strong leadership management can result in inadequate resources and low employee engagement. Now, I'm presenting this in this session today to set the context for what I'm going to share in the next couple of minutes, the business case of introducing lean knowledge management. Now, let's not miss the point. The very intent, the end game, is to demonstrate ROI, or return of effort. That being the case, it also means that we're talking about reliable results. We're also talking about ways in which we should now embrace uncertainty in the age of AI, Gen AI, VUCA, whatever you call it. And the need to harness creativity. We can call it KM, yes, recognizing that individuals are the ultimate source of value at the heart of what we do, and not forgetting this must translate to some sort of performance increase and over time, improving the effectiveness and reliability through strategies, processes, and practices. So keeping this in mind, in the simplest of definition, yes, we know loads of answers. We've talked about this. There's a lot of academic discussion of what is KM. But in the simplest of definition, in Knoco, we define KM as a management discipline focused on delivering value. And I think that word value has to stand out predominantly. And in the surveys that we have done internally over the years, what is common is the fact that, as you can see, the chief reason for not doing KM is very often the very notion that KM gets sidelined and the other priorities that come into the picture. And that's not surprising. And given the fact that we know today of this very word, VUCA. So the question that I'd like to ask our panelists here today, the team, the audience, perhaps is this very word, VUCA. Have you experienced VUCA? What has happened in regards to VUCA in your KM environment? So perhaps this could be the context to the discussion. If I can just perhaps get some feedback. Let me just get onto the chat if I am seeing my chat here. Okay, the chat has gone missing. Okay. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting out my chat. Yes. Rajesh, thank you about that. Thank you. We got some responses coming in. Hit us bad? Absolutely. Now, like it or not, VUCA has affected and will continue to affect us as we go along. So, ladies and gentlemen, VUCA is definitely not going to away. It's never going to go away. And if we do what we've always done, as the saying goes, we will get what we've always got. So that means to say the way in which we deliver KM, the way in which we engage our stakeholders has to be different. And allow me to set some jargons or set some terminologies here in the context of what we're discussing. The whole aspect of lean, what is lean? Agile, knowledge supply chain, minimal viable KM, iteration, KM iteration. So I'm just going to run through some of these ideas, perhaps giving the context to how we can possibly infuse agility in our KM implementation and rollout. Now, to set the context, let me just give you this Venn diagram that probably gives you this nice sweet spot, how the interplay between KM, lean principles, and agile practices come about. But let me start with the very first thing that probably gives you the bit of the background of agility. And I like this definition that we have coined ourselves, to be very honest. The A, B, C, D, E, F, and G of agility. As you can see, A being the mindset, B is the being, C being customer focused, delivering value, embracing change through tight feedback cycles, and goal driven. And if that is the definition of agility, what is lean then? Well, historically, we have known many companies having reaped considerable benefits by applying a variation of Toyota production system, and we call that lean. It's not new. But the question is, how do we integrate the benefits of lean in what we do in KM? So introducing this whole concept of knowledge supply chain with the intention of improving efficiency, reducing waste, and delivering value. So ladies and gentlemen, I am emphasizing on the need for us to focus on the knowledge supply chain, bringing in efficiency, reducing waste, and delivering value. Now, if I were to put this in a context, now we've got the demand and supply coming in, a typical supply chain. We've got the need and the supply. Well, in the first instance, we ask this question: what knowledge do the requesters, knowledge workers, if we call themselves, need to be able to make the right decisions or provide positive impact? So that's the seeker. And we also have the kind of sense, how can knowledge be supplied or be packaged to be delivered efficiently and effectively? So now here's the aspect of how much is enough. Here's the aspect of time. So you've got the aspect of timing, you've got the aspect of amount to be efficient and effective, right? You've got this two juggling act of time and amount. Because anything more excessive will not be effective either. And then here comes the part where it's actually made available. How can knowledge be packaged to support the user and made available to others? So these are fundamental questions that I would like our listeners to probably just ponder on these three big questions. And therein comes the next part of the reflection. Because when you think about the same aspect of seeking, embedding KM and agility, comes this idea of what we call as knowledge backlog, right? The importance of having this prioritization of what we call as knowledge backlog. And there comes the next question, the sense bit, where, remember I was telling to you about the content, the amount, and the timing. So introducing this aspect of the idea of minimal valuable KM, just about enough. And then comes the whole packaging of delivering this value, and we call it the KM iteration. Some might call it KM sprint, but the idea is similar. So the question is, what is this value that we're talking about? Well, it can manifest in different forms. It could be the needs, it could be wants, it could be business priorities, it could be reputational needs, it could be urgency, it could be importance. So anything that comes in the context of value is understood in that perspective. So moving on to the aspect of how we connect the dots. To implement lean KM effectively, we adopt KM practices. So coming back to the Venn diagram again, you see the perspective, KM, lean principles, and agility coming to the picture. Now I'd like to share with you a framework that we've been talking about and discussing and doing some work with our stakeholders for a while now. And we call it the Lean KM framework. Now, within the time or the context I have, it may not be viable to discuss and go into the depth of it, but certainly you will have a very good idea of what this is. Well, in the first instance, we talk about the knowledge backlog. And herein I discuss with you the idea of aligning our work with value. And here we involve the aspect of KM and agility. There comes the next bit, embedding minimal KM enablers. I'm talking about the word minimal KM enablers, just about sufficient, not excessive, not over the board, just enough to do what we need to do. Remember, we're talking about optimization of effort and cost with the highest return of value, and that about well sums up the understanding of what minimal valuable KM is. And then we talk about the rollout, the actual manifestation of what we're trying to do in an actual action plan by packaging this in bite-sized rolled out. Well, in the Agile sphere, we talk about this in the form of 2 to 4 weeks iteration, where high impact, high priority items get packaged and delivered and validated by our stakeholders. And that's the key word, because if it's not validated, if it's not affirmed to be valuable, it is not valuable. And the final bit of the whole framework is the aspect of lean KM retrospect. The ability for us to reflect on what we have had within the iteration, to learn, to accept, and to improve. Now, you can think of this as a way in which we manifest KM implementation, a bit of change management if you like, a bit of prioritization if you like, a bit of feedback if you like, a bit of showcasing KM impact if you like, because we start with the high value items and validating our work along the way. Now, to sum up the discussion of today, I'd like to share at the heart of what we do as individuals in the understanding of lean KM is to improve efficiency, to promote continuous learning, simplifying knowledge access, fostering personal growth, and accountability. So the manifestation of the framework would result in these key components that I've just shared with you. And at the level of the team, we're talking about streamlining collaboration, being able to assist in enhancing decision-making, breaking down silos, driving innovation through shared knowledge and continuous improvement. And at the organization level, we're talking about, over time, lean KM being able to boost agility, organization agility, reducing cost, enhancing competitiveness, supporting long-term success, optimizing knowledge processes, and continuous improvement culture. That's over time. And on that note, I'd like to end my presentation and happy to take some questions and discuss some thoughts.
We've
Over
got
to you.
we've got a couple of questions there.
Sure.
First one's coming from Rajesh. How
Sure.
many organizations expect immediate results when talking about lean and agile, leading to premature abandonment of practices? How do you foresee the long-term focus?
Okay, I'm getting the question now in the chat.
Perfect.
Now, at the end of the day, agility is a set of best practices. And embedding agility is no panacea to success. And especially when Rajesh mentioned about the alignment with strategy and business processes, that must be done from the onset. Now, what I have seen in a lot of KM implementation is the aspect of trying to get the stakeholders, particularly trying to have a framework of managing KM implementation that seems to be lacking. And I think if we were to marry this ability for us to orchestrate or scaffold KM implementation effectively with proper processes, whether be it Scrum, Lean, Kanban, whatever framework you may have, but this scaffolding is essential. Now, if this scaffolding does not happen, now there is a tendency in what Rajesh is saying in regards to premature abandonment. And if you ask me from my experience, is the lack of hand-holding, the coaching that needs to happen in the long run. And that is also why I echo what Rajesh said. This needs to happen over time. And I believe there's a follow-up question to that. Should the focus be on tools or processes or on culture? Well, I would probably want to say all three. Now, I had this very interesting question when I presented a topic similar to what I'm doing today in a conference that Rajesh hosted in Bali. And I'm not sure whether you remember this, Rajesh, where there was one audience that asked this question. And he said, you know what, Sanath, I don't think we can do this sort of thing because this is not our culture. Now, then my quick and simple response was that, well, if that's the case, they will never get things done anyway. Because if you were to blame the culture, which is nothing but a manifestation of practices and behavior traits over time, then all we need to do is substitute with the new sets of practice and behavior over time to become a new culture, right? So that's a good point that you shared. So I think there's got to be a holistic approach to how we do this sort of thing. I hope that answered your question, Rajesh. Well, I see some other questions. How can organizations ensure knowledge is effectively packaged and made accessible to users across different levels of the knowledge supply chain? Now, that's very interesting. Now, in the very first instance, I think we need to have our North Star. We need to know what are we focusing on. Given the resources we have, remember you always have a capacity and capability issue. And given that scope of limitation you have and the velocity the team exhibit, you need to deliver something within that time frame. And if you recall the little discussion I've had about this whole idea of having this knowledge backlog, is to be able to harness that priority, that value, that importance from the onset. And only with that can you then prioritize effort, seek buy-in, seek sponsors to put forward your case. Now, therein will not also guarantee your success, because from my experience, what has happened is, even with all of that, you will find that, number one, where is the return? So this is the reason why I've emphasized on embedding agility in the way we deliver knowledge, because we have to have a framework that continuously evolves, that demonstrates value, that seeks alignment, that continuously improves itself. So that's my quick answer to the second question. Then we have the next question. What are common challenges when adopting Lean KM, and how can they be addressed? Now, the way I come from, and the implementation of KM has to be systemized. I'm not saying here that it's not systemized at the moment. What I'm saying is we should treat it as a project. And treating it as a project has got its pitfalls too, because it doesn't quite end. Okay, so that's the pitfall. But what I'm talking about is the philosophy of bundling efforts into iterations, planning them out, systemizing the feedback cycle, the feedback loop, the retrospectives. Now, these are some of the common challenges. Sam, you have a question. What are some quick wins for implementing Lean KM to drive immediate results? Now, this is the trick question. You know why I said it's a trick question? Because when you start with a backlog, which is nothing but a list of priority areas, you will always have the high impact areas. And these high impact areas or value activities, whether it's your lessons learned, whether it's your framework development, these are all activities that demand a lot of effort, time, and resource. And they're typically high risk. So what I'm saying is, don't start immediately with these high impact areas, because you need to have that credibility when you start KM work. So look for a piece, a puzzle, an area where you can potentially demonstrate success immediately. And that is the quick win that I would suggest you to do. Farooq, a question that you have asked. What actions from leadership can foster a successful lean knowledge management culture? Absolutely a good question. And I think we spoke about this earlier. Rajesh spoke about this quite well. And I think it's all in the mindset. And I can't say this enough, because the whole understanding of the importance to leverage expertise, to prioritize, to drive KM forward, to the importance in having a team to orchestrate and manage this properly, has to start from the top. So what we do is awareness session, that may be enough. We conceptualize ideas to top management, it may be not be enough. We sometimes have discussions with them, it may not be enough. So Farooq, that's a good one.
So there's one question that has been sent at the back, and I just read it out for
Sure.
everyone. It came to the team. What roles does emerging tech AI/ML play in accelerating implementation of Lean KM principles? I've
Oh,
also put on
absolutely.
chat.
Thank you.
Whoever's put the question, I did not get your name, but we got your questions.
I think it's actually a good question. And well, I pretty much like to share this also. The tool that you want to use to accelerate AI does help, but at the end of the day, it's a question of two words: mindset and leadership. The implementation of Lean KM has to be underpinned by a very strong, firm understanding of agility in the context of what I've shared earlier, VUCA, and the challenges we have in this new age. So yes, you've got loads of tools out there, and I wouldn't want to name any of them, but there are loads of tools that out there which can accelerate. But I've also seen instances where these tools have quickly fallen apart because of this lack of the two underpinners, mindset and leadership support. That's a quick answer to that question. Great question.
I guess that's getting answered. Rajesh says, spot on with this answer. We can have the tools if leadership and mindset is dislodged.
Well said.
So if there are no other questions coming from the audience, I just wait for a few seconds to see if we're getting anything. Okay, so there's one more, Rajesh. In knowledge management and leveraging AI and machine learning, who wins? Human intuition or creativity?
Sorry, I didn't see the question somewhere.
It's not a very quick, critical question. I just repeat
Right.
it again.
Okay.
In KM,
Yeah.
leveraging AI and machine learning, who wins? Human intuition or creativity?
Well, I would put it this way. The way I've seen is there's a space for both. But what should not happen is one becomes subservient to the other. Now, I would go with the parameters of mindset and leadership driving the implementation of AI, large language models, complementing AI efforts moving forward.
Thanks, Sanath. I guess that will be all from the audience for now. And again, like I said previously, Sanath's available at his details, which you can see on screen. You can connect with him various ways, or you could reach out to us and we'll put you in touch with Sanath. Next, I'd like to thank you, Sanath, for taking the time out.
Thank you
This was
so
a very,
much.
very insightful session. Thank you.